thought I'd talk just a little bit today about what keeps me going in this interest and in this study and coverage of ECAT technology. It's an interesting question because I'm certainly not a technical person when it comes to electronics or physics I'm a curious person. I've got a lot of interests and a lot of things that fascinate me, and this is one of those topics, but certainly I'm not what anyone would say. I wouldn't have much of a scientific background. So why am I so interested in this topic? And that's a question I ask myself sometimes. I would just say that for as long as I can remember, topics related to energy have had a kind of an importance to me and fascination for me. I can remember I grew up in a time in the 1970s in the United Kingdom when energy was a big topic back then. I can remember we would have like regular power cuts when I don't know. As a kid, I really didn't understand what was going on. All I remember was that the power would go off at certain times, and we would just have to huddle at home with a cook stove and candles and lamps and things like that. And I kind of got a, a sense back then that energy was quite an important thing. I can remember also as a period, I think it was when there was an oil embargo going on, and people were queuing up for there was petrol rations at the petrol stations, and it was just everything was disrupted because of energy. And as a boy, I was sort of interested and also kind of worried about this. I said, I realized we needed energy to keep the world going, and what would happen if you ran out of energy? Could that actually happen? And so I think those kind of early experiences got me interested in the topic. And I always wondered what if something better than what we have came along? Could that actually happen? And I was sort of interested in the solar and the wind concepts, because I thought, well, this is a new way of doing things. It's using natural forces, and but it didn't seem to be a permanent solution, because I noticed that all the big powerful things that we were using, like trains and planes and ships and boats and lighting and all the electricity, was coming from power stations, which are obviously very, very important to keep things going. Anyway, so that was kind of my early experiences, and then but I did keep wondering in the back of my mind, what if there was something better? And I kind of wished that there was. I hoped that there would be. And so it got me interested in kind of unusual, unconventional energy sources, even unconventional renewables. And when I learned about the ECAT, I was kind of curious because, I'd heard about Pons and Fleischmann and the cold fusion story. And I can remember learning about that when it hit the news back in 1989. And, there's a bit of a hope there that, wow, maybe they've discovered what I've been hoping for. Maybe this cold fusion is the thing that could really, really make a difference. Plus, I guess I should add that growing up in Britain in the 1970s, nuclear power was a big hot topic, and that was a time when there was a lot of opposition to nuclear plants. So I kind of got soured on nuclear just because of I'm not so sour as I was now, because I don't think that the dangers are maybe as big as they were made out to be in those early days. But anyway, cold fusion kind of hit the headlines, and then it sort of fizzled out when academics decided that it was junk science and that Pons and Fleischmann were really not trustworthy, or they were not, the work couldn't be replicated, and they were sort of banished, I think, from the scientific community. So I think that was a bit of a disappointment, although I wasn't quite sure if this was the answer, but it was something new that I thought was interesting. But when I heard about the ECAT and Andrea Rossi, I kind of got that same hope again, that maybe this time there's something new and something better. But then there were some people who were disparaging Rossi and his work, and I kind of felt like, listen, you've got to give everyone a fair hearing. You can't just dismiss something because so-called experts say it's not worth paying attention to. And there were a lot of people, and still are, who really don't have a lot of good things to say about Andrea Rossi. But anyway, I thought I'd give this a fair hearing, and decided that I was going to investigate it open-mindedly. And the more I learned about it, the more interested I became. And that was why I started the website, which I've said before, that April 2011 was when the website ECAT World got started. But since that time, it's just, I've never really come across anything that says to me that Rossi is deluded, or he's fraud or whatever. In fact, the more I've learned about him and the more I've communicated with him, and I went to that Latina demonstration, and I've met him on other occasions, and from that time, from the beginnings, I really have never had a reason to think that he is falsifying anything. And I do believe that, science, what science says is impossible, is not necessarily the case. If you look through the history of science and technology, there have been many, many breakthroughs that are commonplace nowadays that were probably thought to be impossible. And I don't rule out at all that major breakthroughs can be brought about by people who are smart, persistent, and who are not bound by conventional thinking. I think that's one of Andrea Rossi's great characteristics, is that he is willing to go to places scientifically where people have kind of closed the door, and he says, well, why don't I just open the door and look a little further? And some people criticize Rossi because he doesn't really participate in the scientific community. He's a bit of a loner. He's definitely a loner. He's doing things on his own because he's not just a scientist. He's also he's involved in this not only from a scientific point of view, but also from a commercial, business point of view. And so he doesn't really fit the mold of just an academic or just a scientist. I think he looks at things from a much from a different perspective, and he wants to be successful in business, and which doesn't explain why he doesn't want to share more than he does. So, I'm an optimistic person too. I look at the future, and I think we can do much better than we are doing at the moment when it comes to, especially the topic of energy, which I think is probably, if we can crack the energy topic, if we can crack energy, I think we can solve many, many more problems, because energy is pretty much at the source of everything that our modern civilization does. So There's another thing too, which I don't mention very often, but when I wonder about whether these things are possible, there's a topic that has interested me from quite an early age too, which is the UFO topic. For a long time, it was considered to be kind of a kookish topic, and a lot of people involved in it were considered to be crackpots. But I think we've learned in recent years that there's a lot of evidence for technology that is far, far beyond what we are able to do on as human beings on this planet. So that's always been also like a thing that's made me think that yes, we can do much better than we do now. Somehow whoever these spacecrafts are powered by, I have no idea who's behind it. That's another topic, but completely. But I think there's plenty of evidence that there are things that can be done in this physical world that we have no idea how it's done. So that's just another area that gives me hope that we can improve on what we've got. And I do think that the ECAT and the work of Rossi is a way forward. I understand why people are skeptical, and I do acknowledge that it really hasn't been demonstrated to the world in the way that people would like it to be. It's all been very secretive to this point, but I'm hopeful that we can get beyond this plateau that we're on at the moment and see some real progress and start seeing ECAT technology being used outside the Rossi umbrella. I think that's what really needs to happen, is that people outside Rossi's circle can start using ECAT without they can start using ECAT independently. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And I hope that this is the year that it happens, or it begins. Thank you for your interest, as always.